Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Marie and myself, Coach David Syvertson. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset. All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am David Syvertson. I'm here with Coach Adam Ramson, and we are going to talk about a very classic CrossFit topic, also a very classic American topic, and that just means overdoing it in everything. And we live in a world, we live in an era, we live in a country, in an area in North Jersey where everything is about just being more. More is better. More. Whether it's food, whether it's money, whether it's parties, whether it's exercise and our weights and our reps. Every corner you look around, it's almost like someone's just trying to one up something that they either used to do or what someone else is now doing. And I think this applies to the CrossFitter as much as anything, is that, or people that are, quote, addicted to fitness, is that we always feel like we have to do something more. And here at CrossFit Bison, we have a lot of, and CrossFit in general, you have a master's population that it continues to grow. Like people are just getting older, right? And this is something that a lot of us struggle with is, you know, you're trying to stay as fit as possible. You have a goal. We just talked about the Bison benchmark last week. People just got done with High Rocks. We have a lot of competitors at the gym. And it's hard not to imagine that you should do more to really achieve that goal. And I didn't ask Adam this prior to, because I want to get like a spontaneous definition from him. What is the definition of overtraining?
I think the my definition of overtraining is putting yourself in a position with your training where injury is not it's not a percentage of whether you're going to get injured, because people can get injured at any time walking across the street. It's that, is injury inevitable with the amount of volume that you're putting in towards your fitness?
Right. And it's funny how when I listen and research and read about people that are in the physical training space, not necessarily within CrossFit, I would actually say I hear this more outside of CrossFit than anything, is that they will always say a fitness program that leads to injury is not a good fitness program. And there's always that song in my head. I'm like, well, if you do intense physical activity, at some point, something is going to go. And then we have to really kind of define, then we go into the weeds. What is an injury, right? Is a muscle strain that you're out for a few weeks, is that really a real injury, or is it something you need a surgery for, right?
Yep.
But we know CrossFitters, Adam, that are banged up often, or maybe even always. And is overtraining the reason? Is it under recovering? Is it genetics? But I also see this in professional sports, and injuries are a lot more common than they used to be. And I think part of that is that people train 12 months a year now. They always feel like someone's getting one up on them. Why do you think people view more training as better? What is that? Is it addiction? Is it boredom? Is it disappointing and being disappointed in themselves? Why is overtraining such a rampant problem in CrossFit, but in general?
Yeah, I think it's one of the issues that people have with the whiteboard, is that you can see what everybody's done. And I think naturally you kind of put yourself into small groups of athletes that you feel you're on kind of the same level with. So that way you can look at their scores, see like, okay, how did they do in this workout? How should I be looking? Which is a great thing to do. But you're also always going to walk into the gym and there's going to be somebody doing extra work, you know?
Yeah, right.
You're going to say to yourself, well, we're right on the same level, and now that person's doing a little bit extra. Am I going to fall down? And all of a sudden now they're going to be, you know, I know they look at my scores. Are they going to be saying, oh, what happened to Adam's scores? Is falling off a cliff and stuff like that. If they have the time and the ability, you know, they're recovering better. But again, it's all those factors that we talked about, right? What's your training age? You know, I think it's a lot of the people that we see that are always kind of like banged up. It's because they've been doing high level competitive athletics for years and years and years. Whereas somebody that hasn't done much comes in, you know, or maybe they've just been a runner or do their own calisthenics thing, like their joints are able to, you know, take a lot more just because they haven't put that wear and tear of years of competitive sports on their bodies.
Yeah, I mean, they literally have more cartilage left. I
Right.
mean, that's usually what a lot of what it comes down to is like it's because everyone does have a shelf life. I think all athletes do need to know that. And it's very easy for a pro athlete in the sports that we follow, right? Football, baseball, hockey, right? Soccer. It's very easy to understand that at some point you're no longer going to be on that level. Like, hey, I am no longer one of the top 1% of the 1% of the 1%. I can no longer make a career out of doing this. It's, in my opinion, it's kind of easier to realize that. And you made your money, you left, you go do your thing. But with fitness, in a world where everyone's trying to just be healthier and fitter, and some of it's competition, some of it's not. Some of it's just like, I just want to be healthy. I want to work hard. I want to grind. It's really hard for people our age and older, and even in some cases younger. Like, when is the time for you to really kind of take a step back and alter your training so that you can view it as longevity? Because the longer you do stay in sport, I'm not going to say it definitely, but you're much more likely to hit something that's not going to be pleasant. And it's going to actually pull you away from it. You're not going to walk away from it. And I think all of us want to go away from really intense stuff, whether it's competing or just intense work. We want to go on our own terms.
Mhm.
You don't want a surgery or a massive joint problem to be like, yeah, you're basically never going to tie your shoes again, or
Right.
you're not going to be able to go hike with your kids. You can't, run around with your kids or coach or anything like that. Nobody wants that, but I do think everyone wants to get as close as possible. And that's not going to come in thin air, like out of thin air. You're not going to have a message come down like, all right, hey, it's your time. You can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to someone that says like, hey, Adam, I want to push. I still want to compete. I really want to see what I can do I want to see what I'm capable of. I love it. It's fun. It's a hobby. But I would say it's like the Kelly Starrett line. Every time you do something you shouldn't do, it's like cutting that one more thread from the rope, and eventually the rope won't work. It'll snap. What's your advice to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just got to be, you've got to be honest with yourself. We see a lot of professional athletes, especially there's a larger trend I'm seeing of professional athletes stepping away earlier, and just saying, you know what, my body can't handle this anymore. I know before I get to that point, I'm going to walk away. And there's usually a negative connotation with that, right? All the fans say, well, come on, you've got years left. Like, what are you doing? And so it can be really difficult. And especially when you have somebody that's a CrossFit athlete or just fitness, you want to be able to do it for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a risk reward, right? If you want to up the intensity, I'm never going to say don't do it. But, just know that when we're pushing the line there, the longer we push the line, and the longer we red line, the more you're saying, like, you're just upping the chances you're going to get into the car accident.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a good way of putting it. And to try to relate that to outside of fitness, right? Is if you wanted to, make more money, start a new job, open up a business, like there's pros and cons to everything. And I do think that helps decision making, but also self-awareness with where you're at. Like if you were like, hey, I want to go make an extra X amount of dollars next year, I'm going to start a business. Like, cool. Are you cool with working 7 days a week? Are you cool with spending less time with your kids? Are you cool with not being there in the morning, not there at night, and coming home early from vacation because you have to do X, Y, Z? That's something that, like, you in your head, you're like, all right, that doesn't seem like it's worth it to me. You'll gain in some areas, right? Like you put extra effort, you will get fitter, you might be more competitive. That might fill a void, and you're going to be really proud of it. But the other side of it is, you might not even be able to CrossFit in a couple of years. You might not be able to ever do an overhead squat again. You might be one of those guys, right? You might be someone that walks away because you can't physically handle it anymore. And it's a tough thing. Like my mom always says, like, you can't always live in fear that like something bad's going to happen. All right. But you also have to be realistic. And I think that is where a lot of CrossFitters that have an overtraining problem is that they put a little too much self-worth into what their performance is, and even more dangerous, what other people might think about it, because now now this is no longer an internal thing. Mm-hmm. And that brings up a whole different set of issues, that if you're doing it for external validation, you're going to lose hard at some point, But if it's for internal validation, hey, I like to work hard. I like that dopamine rush of accomplishing things. And this is where I want to put my thought, effort, energy. Again, it's not that it's wrong, but you should be aware that there is an other side to it.
Yeah.
Now,
Sorry.
no, I was going to ask you the next question. Expand on that.
Yeah, because, like you've said many times on this podcast, we have a gigantic pool of really fit masters athletes hitting every age throughout there. So it's very easy to walk into the gym every day and say, oh, I could put in the same work as that person and do as much training, and they never got hurt. They're fine. They're killing it at 55, 60, 65 years old, but what you don't see are the people that, did that and got hurt, and now they can't CrossFit anymore.
Yep.
So it's similar to the person that you see on the news that's just celebrated their 100th birthday. How'd you do it? Oh, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and drinking 2 glasses of whiskey a night. Like those are the outliers.
Yeah.
And could you follow that same path? Absolutely. But there's also the other side of it where it could affect you earlier on than you want to.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I do hear that a lot. Actually, when I started Next Level in 2017, I actually got a little bit negative flack for it because you're like, oh, well, it's going to create this feeling in the gym that everyone has to do more work because those 2 people are getting better, right? And whether it's a money issue, time issue, a lot of people, it's just like, you don't have the time to go to the gym and work out again. You just don't have it. And I kind of like dismissed it and merely it's just like, whatever. But now I do get it, right? Like as you get busier and you wish you could put that more time into recovery too, or I wish I could get there a half hour early and get my warm up in, maybe get an extra supplementary strength work in. But the one thing I've accepted, and it's helped me cope with that, is that life is not fair. Like there are certain people that can put it in and they won't get hurt. And it's not just because they move better or they recover or eat better. We're all very individual. Like there are things you cannot handle physically. And I think in time, we have a lot of CrossFitters that have been doing this for over 10 years. You know, deep down, what you can handle, what you can't. What's risky and what's not. Right? Whether it's how many times you go to the gym, how many times you're really pursuing high effort, that red RPE 910, going all out, signing up for competitions and qualifiers. But I think comparing what other people do to what you are doing is the wrong way to approach it. You can use people as an example, but that example of whiskey and cigarettes and living to 100, I think those things, you have to keep that out of your head. It's really, you have to keep this internal and really be able to self-analyze what you're doing. What do you mean by use versus abuse?
Yeah. So I think with anything, we're using the gym to get fitter. And so the natural thought process would be, well, the more I use it, the better it'll be. But as with anything, once you get to a certain threshold, now you've crossed into abuse. We talk about when technology was introduced for my students, it became this great thing until we started putting them on screens all day long. Now they were abusing the technology. It affected their attention span. And we've seen research that, now screen time, just moderation of that is the best approach. So I think when we're looking at anything, we have to look at it as moderation. And if you're going to increase your load, don't do that all at once. Kind of generally work that in. Because I think that,
So if someone works out 4 days a week, you don't want them to go from 4 to 6 and then also set 6 more sessions per week just because they're really ambitious. They have to really try 4 days a week, try 5 days a week. Okay, now try 5 days a week, and one of those days can be a little bit of extra conditioning. Okay, and now you pass these tests, your body still feels good. You're still, hydrated and sleeping well, and you don't have aches and pains. Okay, maybe you could try 5 days with 2 days of extra work, morning and afternoon, if you have the time. That's what you mean by really kind of easing into the extra work.
Yeah. Or like, rather than adding in a second high intensity WOD every day, make that second session accessory work or just machine work or a light, it could be as easy as adding in a walk every day, something that's not going to beat you up. And it's going to be on a personal level. Like I know I could add in running, high volume running 3 times a week and be fine. But you asked me to add an extra squat day in, and all of a sudden my legs and knees are going to be beat up.
Yep. Now, when someone is injured or banged up, right? And at any given point in a gym that's as big as Bison, you're going to have, at least a handful of people that are kind of dealing with something. And when we talk about doing, accessory work instead of workouts, and still trying to improve, by the way, like accessory work to this day still does not get enough attention for getting yourself better. Right. We know someone right now that's recovering from a surgery and he's chomping at the bit. He can't wait to get back in the gym. Does it always need to be about like that classic show up and wide and get a good score? Or can I find ways to improve my big picture through accessory work? Or is it, hey, do extra workouts? Is it replacing movements? What's your suggestion for someone to avoid overtraining while they're banged up, which is amazing. That's a huge thing. People are hurt and they're still overtraining because there is this thought that they can do more. If they do more, they're going to improve. They're going to get the blood flowing. They're going to get the mental and emotional stimulus from training that it's going to make them feel better. What's your suggestion to someone to avoid overtraining while they're dealing with either an injury or they're coming back from something?
Yeah. With the intensity of the normal Bison WOD, it's very easy at the end of the workout to say, oh, I put in some really good work. I'm sweating. I'm holding my breath. I'm dramatically on the floor, like I'm guilty of almost every day. It's easy for me to say, okay, I know I got a good workout in because I'm so tired at the end of the workout. When you're doing strictly accessory work, you don't get that same feeling.
Yep.
So now you have to find another data point to be able to look back and say, okay, there's my improvement. There's how I'm increasing my work capacity and stuff like that. And whether that's just reps per minute, whether that's just unbroken reps on, say, like a pull-up or a Bulgarian split squat, the weight that you're using, all those things. You need to keep track of those things to get the improvement rather than just saying, oh, I'm dead tired on the floor. I'm obviously getting fitter.
Yeah. I think we are all guilty of this to a point, but I've seen a lot of improvement with a lot of people in this regard over the past few years, is that how you feel the next day is also a part of your workout score from the previous day. So if you crushed a workout, but you're in shambles and we've all been there 2, 3, 4 days, right? Throw thrusters that we did on a Friday a few weeks ago. I was banged up for about 4 days after that. That's the mark of really not a good workout in some ways, right? And there's a time and place to really push and make yourself sore. And you went for it, which is, I always admire that kind of effort, but that doesn't always mean you did a good job. Because if you can't work out for 3 or 4 days because you did a good workout, that is a hole in the fitness that actually prevents you from getting to your end goal. Like if you can't go to the gym for 3 days because you did a really well on a workout 3, 4 days ago, and that left you sore, whether it's joint, muscle, whatever, that's a hole in the fitness. And I think that's where the mature CrossFitter will view this as recovery is a part of my fitness. And that's like in my head all the time. If I can't recover from a session or from a 2-day hard session, hey, take a day off, cool. But if I'm still banged up, I'm not doing well, that's a significant hole. Recovery is never sexy, but I also think it's something that gets overlooked all the time. Sleep, hydration, food, alcohol intake, mobility work, accessory work. That if you can do accessory work that's not fun, and your watch didn't tell you that you worked hard today, you didn't burn a ton of calories, but you show up the next day and you can go hard and you feel good, that's a good workout. That's a good session. So what I'm trying to say with too many words right now is that it can't all be about today's workout.
Right.
What do you feel like tomorrow?
Yeah. And the other thing there is that, I think for a vast majority of CrossFitters, what workouts do you really go after? It's your wheelhouse workouts.
Yeah.
Right. So if I see a wheelhouse workout on a Monday and I say, oh, I'm going to crush this one, and then all of a sudden I have to miss or I have to pull back from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where are my weak workouts?
Yep.
They have the weaknesses where I really should be pushing my intention and really focusing on those workouts. And now I can't do them because I crushed my wheelhouse workout, but now I'm feeling the effects of that days after. That's only creating that bigger gap in between my strengths and my weaknesses.
That's a great point, because your wheelhouse workout, you're going to have a hard time getting better at them.
Right.
You just saw, you're probably like, if you've been CrossFitting 10 years and you have a wheelhouse workout and you go crush it and you beat everyone, you feel good about yourself, all that good stuff, you probably didn't get that much fitter in that session, right? And because you're really not going to improve in things you're really good at already. But if the goal is truly to get fitter, to become more fit, more able, right? The margin for improvement is there on the things you're not good at.
Right.
You know, but it's hard because we view, this is what makes overtraining, this topic, kind of sensitive to a lot of people, that a lot of people do it to feel good about themselves. They love that feeling, almost have an addiction to the feeling of doing really well on a workout they're very good at. And it kind of takes them away from the actual goal of becoming a fitter version of yourself, because the margin is so tiny on the stuff you're already good at.
Right.
You know, but if you have that intensity on these days where you're not good at it, I know it might not make you feel good in the moment, but if the true goal is to become fitter, those are where your wins are.
Yep.
That's where they exist. That's where you have them you can grab them at that point.
Right. And yeah, as a personal anecdote, you know, I can remember year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, one time I tweaked my lower back, which still comes in and out to this day. It was not the deadlift workout, right? I wanted to go in, I wanted to deadlift heavy because I feel very confident in my deadlift. I feel strong with that. It was the wall walks on the next day, which is my weakness. And now all of a sudden I'm putting myself in a bad position because my lower back is a little bit tired because I pushed on the deadlifts, and I'm not really focusing on my movement on the wall walks because I struggle with them. So I'm just trying to get through with it. And then you get that little tweak and all of a sudden it becomes a problem. So
I've been there several times myself, and
that's overtraining for me. You know, I didn't add in any extra volume, but I said, right, I want to kill this deadlift workout and then, you know, go on to the next and still hit my 4 or 5 days a week. And, you know, came back.
So if I'm listening to you and be like, all right, so Adam, are you telling me not to show up on that deadlift day? Like what's tangible advice for someone that says like, hey, I need to work on my wall walks and they're on Tuesday, but I love deadlifts and they're Monday, but Monday might bang me up for Tuesday. Do you not go? Do you scale back intensity? Like, is there a mental approach? Is there something tangible or physical some people can do? Because again, they might show up to a gym on a Monday and they might have the coach that day be like, bro, you better crush this. You got to do this. You got to get rest per minute. And that's tough. Like I do empathize for the athlete on a topic like this, because you can be pulled in a few different directions. What's your reply to that?
Yeah, I would tell somebody, you know, that if let's say it's a 5x3 deadlift and you're normally doing your single, dropping it, right? Go a little bit lighter and concentrate on that descent motion.
Yeah.
You know, really follow through. And that's going to help you not only with, you know, that weeks of work, if you have those following days, but also when we do have touch and go reps in a deadlift workout, all of a sudden you're going to be stronger at that motion because now you're concentrating on that descent, pulling back a little bit from the weight, not maybe getting that max rep or that max weight that you could have if you were allowed to do those singles, but being intentional about where you're trying to improve throughout. Because again, right, like that deadlift may only go up by 5 pounds,
right? But
if you can increase your wall walk capacity, now all of a sudden, if you have a workout with both of those, you're getting stronger in that workout no matter what.
Yeah. And again, what's the goal? I want to become fitter. Cool. Then you have to put more intensity on that second session.
Right.
And yeah, in some cases it's lift less weight. You know, you don't need to, if you're trying to maintain your ability on the deadlift, or honestly, you're trying to protect the back so that you're not banged up the next couple of days, get away from the leaderboard. And I know at a competitive gym like Bison, everyone struggles with it. Even the people that don't say they care. Everyone cares a little bit. That's where, again, maturity comes into play, that like it doesn't matter as much as you think you do. Like these days where, hey, I can crush that deadlift workout and it's going to make me feel good. That's a very short-term win. And you're going to have more of them down the road. And it really does, it takes an emotionally mature person to say like, hey, I know I could do better on this. And yes, some people might see this, they might quote judge me on that. But if your true goal is to become fitter and be safer and be healthier, all this stuff, right? The decisions are pretty easy to make. And I think they should be made before you get to the gym. Like, you guys start thinking about this now when this happens. Like, plan these things out in your head now, so that when this does come up, because it will come up. You already have kind of like this answer in your head. When it comes to competition prep, I'm partnering with Mike Warren in August, the Vitruvian Games. And it's funny that I was about to text him like, hey, I'm not going to start training like 7 extra time. Like, I'm not really going to do a lot of specific training for this. Maybe some machine work because I feel safe with it. Maybe we can practice a workout or two on a Sunday. But as I'm typing that out, he goes, let me know what else I can do after every single session, like 5-6 days a week. Because we know Mike loves to train. He's young. He's got capacity. But it's funny how when someone signs up for a comp, we saw this with High Rocks. We saw this with barbells and beers. We've seen this with open prep and quarterfinals and semifinals, right? Is that it's hard for a lot of athletes that compete to not just keep throwing stuff onto the wall and just train as much as possible because they think that's the route. And in some ways, training extra is a good idea for competition prep, but it requires a few things. And those few things have very little to do with what you're doing in the gym. It's your lifestyle, it's your recoverability, it's your awareness, and it's also a programming thing as well. Touch on the advice you want to give to people that are signed up for something that's in front of them 2-3 months out, and what they should and should not do.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the pitfall of when you sign up for a comp is, if it's your first competition, you're saying, okay, I've been coming CrossFit consistently, and now I have to do 4 workouts in a 7-hour window, right? So all of a sudden you say, okay, I have to up my capacity to be able to get this work in multiple times. First thing I would tell somebody is that at most local competitions, they're not going to have those long 15, 20-minute workouts. You just can't schedule that. So if you're coming into Bison and you're doing a lot of 15, 16, 18, 20-minute workouts that we do, if you're coming on Saturday and doing 32-minute AMRAPs, all of a sudden you're getting that same amount of volume that you'd be doing in the 2 or 3 workouts that you're going to do, because most of them are 8 or 9-minute workouts, maybe max 10. And then that floater workout, if you have that, is usually like a 1 to 2 minute max effort thing. Mm-hmm. High Rocks, people say, okay, I'm used to coming in for my class for an hour. Now I have to be consistently working out and exercising for over an hour, maybe even an hour and a half, right? Yep. So I have to be able to up the threshold and the endurance that I have. So what I would tell somebody is to be extremely intentional about ramping up that very slowly, because usually you're going to sign up for a comp that's 2 or 3 months out. You know, it's not going to be like the week before and you say, oh, I'm just going to do this competition. Or at least you know that next year you're going to be doing a High Rocks, right, wherever, when it comes to New York. You know, now you have time to say, all right, let me just throw in a small little bit of accessory work 2 or 3 times a week, and then I'll gradually increase the amount of extra work that I'm doing as I push towards the competition date.
Yep. The concept of peaking at the right time is like, that's the secret, right? Like, and professional CrossFitters that do this for a living, and people that have professional coaches that are paying coaches $400 a month and their life revolves around training, they have this down pretty well, that they do peak. And one thing I've shared with Mike about training over the next couple months is like, I'm going to throw a few extra things at him that are very competition specific. And some of them are ski intervals, C2 bike intervals, like things that aren't really going to beat you up. But in these notes that I tell him, like, dude, this is not go get your best score. Like, that's not the point of it. You do a lot of this high intensity work on your day-to-day work, and that's a foundation across it. We know that. But some of this extra work, it's like, hey, we're going to do this exact workout 8 times between now and the end of August. This should be your slowest one.
Yep.
And then next week, we're going to make it a little tougher. Next week, a little tougher. And that's where you become very regimented if you want to compete at a high level. And it takes discipline in a lot of cases to not try as hard as you can. And when I had a coach, it took me 3 months to figure this out. He's like, I'm just used to be like, all right, I saw this workout, go red, get my best possible score. It's not wrong, but it's not the right way to do it. It's not efficient. It's not the safest way to do it, because a part of competing is you have to stay on the floor. You have to not get hurt. You can't take 3 weeks off, and you don't want to show up limping, right? You don't want to show up afraid to like really get underneath a barbell. And this could be applied to lifting, conditioning, skill work, is that there should be a ramp that you are walking up the entire time. It shouldn't just be like, hey, here's 9 extra workouts. And trust me, Dallas and I used to do that all the time. Do a workout, rest 20 minutes, go as hard as you can. The value in that is, yes, it can help build capacity. You can get good at doing things while tired. But again, that's not the only goal of training for a comp. The goal of training a comp is stay healthy. That's number one for everyone. That is the goal. You stay healthy while training, even if you have to do less volume. You have to take more days off. The goal is to stay healthy. So if I had Mike do a workout after a random Thursday workout, and I said, hey, Mike, we're going to practice burpees, bench press, and ski erg. 963. That's the workout. Wait, what? That's it? 963? Because what you can train with low volume is the speed. Go in these competitions, you got to go learn how to go really fast. I don't want you to do a 21:15:9. That's too much volume after a workout. But what you can practice is how fast can you move? How fast can you transition while keeping you fresh again for tomorrow to get some extra work in?
Yeah. And even if, as far as like the High Rocks prep, because just this fresh in my mind when I signed up last year, I worked in the movements that we don't normally do one at a time, without the running in between. But I kept telling myself, like, as I would finish with a sled push, okay, how do you feel right now? If I asked you to go out for a 1,000-meter run, like what intensity would I need to do? Would it be a jog with walks in between? Or could I kind of just keep up my normal running pace? And you don't have to go out for that run. You could just kind of, make a mental note of, I was not ready to run today. And maybe 2 weeks later, you're putting in those sled pushes. All of a sudden, it feels a little bit better. Then you say, okay, let me try out a 200-meter run after this run, and gradually ramp that up as you're getting before getting a competition day.
Yeah. And again, that word ramp up, he just used it. I used it earlier. Like, I want everyone that's competing and you love training and this is a big thing for you. That's got to be something that's in the back of your head. And hopefully you could talk about that with a coach that's programming for you. I mean, I'm more than willing to have that conversation with anyone, because I love talking about, I know you do, Bobby would, like Liz would, all of our coaches can have some really good input on how would ramping up help me, or how can I ramp up for something that's 2 months out? Now, when you sign up for something that's 8 months out, it's a lot less stressful. But when you're like 6 weeks away, 8 weeks away, you do feel a little bit of pressure. But again, the goal should be that you're staying on the floor. And that should be more important than any of your weights, your paces, your reps, all this stuff.
And I did the comp prep with for 908 with Elena. And we immediately threw in full workouts, right? So a lot of times people would come to a Saturday workout. Liz was gracious enough to come back at 1:30 on a Saturday, open up the gym for people, and they were going right back into full 908 workouts. And people were tweaking things. All of a sudden, they had to take Monday, Tuesday. I wouldn't see them on Thursday for their normal 6:15 class because they say, "Oh, I'm beat up from Sunday." Well, then that means you're putting in too much. You've got to be honest with yourself and just say, "Okay, let's just practice our synchro overhead lunges. Let's not worry about the workout as a whole. Let's try to get on the same page with this. What's our burpee pace over the dumbbell? Especially if you have synchro movements in a partner competition, like that can be a focus of that could be your accessory work. Is how are we on the same pace? When Ashley and I did 908 years ago, like her toes to bar pace was just too fast for me.
Right.
It was affecting how I was feeling on toes to bar because I would be beat up. She had to slow down her pace. And once we met that same pace, all of a sudden our work capacity got larger.
No, that's a great way of putting it. It should be viewed as practicing, not training all the time.
Yes.
Now, we just got done with Rafi's mindfulness class yesterday. We both loved it. He did a great job. And, I don't know if there's anything, I mean, it's a quick turnaround, but is there anything that you can add into this episode about being mindful, not only what you're trying to do with your training, or it doesn't have to be competing, just like how much you're training, but really be cognizant of why you're doing what you're doing, when you're doing what you're doing. And because when I just listening to Rafi yesterday, like I've been working with him for a while, and like admittedly, like I'm kind of touch and go on some of this stuff. But again, that's kind of what mindfulness is, and training, the ebbs and flow of life is. But when I listen to it, it does. I hope a lot of people that were there got this out of that you really have to be mindful of why you're doing things and what you're thinking about while you're doing the extra. Do you really believe you need to do the extra session, or is it because of an external factor? And can you touch on some like the mindfulness behind overtraining and trying to avoid it to keep yourself happy, healthy, and moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, it's like we said, it's the ebbs and flows of everything. There are people that are going to just hit a good run, and they're going to be increasing their scores while your scores are decreasing. So being mindful is, without bias and judgment, like Rafi said yesterday, of seeing that happen, but then realizing that, okay, I'm in this lull for whatever reason, rather than saying I'm going to add in 7 workouts so I can keep pace with this person, I'm going to realize that I will get into a better flow at some point, and things will even out, you know? And there are people that are going to add in that extra competition prep, and maybe you can't compare yourself to those people anymore just because maybe they have the extra time that you don't, all those external factors, so then that's a good thing to go back and look at your scores and retest against yourself. Like we talked about last week, being able to use your own data to compare yourself to yourself 2 weeks ago, to see that progress that you're making. Because I guarantee it is happening.
Yeah. I mean, use your own video too, like video workout, and just kind of like break down some of your movement traits. And like, again, the whole like without bias and without judgment. And, I think a lot of people, they add overtraining to their life because of stress. I do think that whether they're unhappy or stressed out about something, or they're stressed out about the fact that they're no longer performing the way they want to perform, or they don't look the way they want to look, or they think everyone else is progressing and they're not. But that's where I think, though, be mindful. If those are really your reasons why you feel that you need to train, don't train more. Don't overtrain, because those things aren't true. There isn't anybody in our gym, there isn't anyone out there that's always getting better. There isn't anyone out there that's always healthy, right? They might have a perception, or you kind of lose track of these 3 people while you go focus on those 3 people. Because at any given point in the gym, there's always someone crushing it. I mean, if we had a coaches poll every week, we could probably come up with a new person every 2 weeks. So, man, this guy's on fire, and it's someone different. But this kind of feeds into the social media era that we live in, that if you go on and you start scrolling, there's always someone on vacation, right? There's always someone just like having a great time. They bought this, and like, and then it makes you think, wow, like everyone is just having, like, at some point, someone's on vacation. I'm just stuck here. I'm stuck where I'm at, where it's just not true. You just kind of looked at a glimpse of that person's day or that life or that stretch of the year, and they're doing well. But you don't pay attention to the 9 months they're not, or the 10 months or 11 months, because you're fixated on someone else. And I think that's something we could all be mindful of, that that's not, you really have to look at it from an internal perspective, like your intention and attention, right? Of what Rafi was talking about yesterday.
Yeah. And I think the attention piece is something that can help you out, because we're always very attentive of the people who are doing well. Right. But the same thing, if you put your attention to it, you're going to notice people that haven't been in your same class for a couple days, or a couple weeks, right? And maybe they tweak something. Maybe they had to pull back from training. We never see that. We just say, oh, they haven't shown up. Okay. Like, a lot of times I'll see somebody come and walk through the door that I haven't seen in a couple of weeks. I've been like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that you hadn't been here for a couple of weeks, because we put so much attention on the people that are doing great. And we kind of get lost in the weeds, the people that are just kind of showing up, or maybe have had to take a step back.
And the last thing on the mindfulness that I would love to touch on with people that have overtraining problems or overtraining tendencies is that there's a whole different scope to training than the physical side to this that is going to make the physical side better. And I mean that, like a huge intention for me personally of better mindfulness training is to make my physical side better. It's not to make me cope with getting older and being less fit and struggling with stuff I used to not be able to struggle with. Like that's not what I'm doing here. It actually can try to make me, I am much more present with all the whys and the hows and the whens that impact all of that stuff. And but there's so much more to it than just throwing extra work in. And, when you're constantly in that fight or flight mode, at some point you might be Superman or Superwoman. It's going to catch up to you. And you do want to avoid that. Now, to close this out, at the bottom of your outline, you have AI use for extra programming. And to me, I mean, this is another fascinating discussion we'll have at some point. The use of AI and programming and coaching and a lot. I mean, the direction it's heading in with the speed at which it's heading in is fascinating to watch and be a part of. But where does your head go with this? Because I think AI is a part of so many conversations now, and I do think it can be a part of this overtraining talk.
Yeah. It's amazing the amount of information you can get through the use of AI, right? If you say, okay, print me out a 6-week program to get better at strict pull-ups from, now I can do 2 at a time to I want to be able to do 10 at a time. It'll spit out exactly what you're doing every day. But we just have to be very careful that that computer program knows nothing about you and how you're feeling day to day. So it's going to give you a program that's going to increase your work capacity, but you have to be mindful of not just following that to the T, because it could lead to, overuse injury. It doesn't know the workouts that you're going to be doing more than a week ahead of time. The other factors, are you going out on the weekends? Does that affect how you feel Monday, Tuesday, when you have to do all this extra work? So it's a great tool to use. But again, if you get into I have to follow this, as doctrine, it could turn into the abuse of AI like we're seeing.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. I mean, I'm a huge AI fan for it being an accessory, right? Like if I want to get better at back squats, this could be like my Bulgarian split squat that helps me get there. But there's a lot more to it, but it's not the only thing you can do. It's not the only thing that's going to give you answers. If anything, it's thought provoking, and it can create conversations with people that can truly help you out, that see you day to day. And I would say, so the last thing I want to touch on, and then we can wrap this up. As a coach, if you had a room full of coaches listening to this, what is some advice you could give them that are dealing with people that overtrain? And I would think in most CrossFits, there are a handful at least, right? You have different size gyms. So let's say 10 to 20% of your people overtrain. This whole episode was giving suggestions to athletes like, hey, be mindful of this, be careful about this. More is not always better. What should I do when I'm injured? Am I abusing or using the gym, right? But from a coach, what's one thing you can try to tell them to help the athletes that are either stubborn or they need the guidance? What is something a coach can be mindful of, they can look for, and then actually implement into the conversations they have?
Yeah. The old saying is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, but that doesn't mean as coaches, we can just stop leading. You're going to get pushback on things, you just have to be relentless. So just know that any conversation that you're having is meant for you trying to give your best advice to that athlete. Some of them are going to take it. Some of them are going to say, no, I can handle all this extra volume that I'm doing. I've got to do it. I'm used to it. I'm used to doing training 2-3 hours a day. But you just say like, hey, I noticed you have been, you hurt your foot the other day, or shoulder's been bothering you, or every time you come in, you're kind of like seeing something that you can scale because that X, Y, or Z is bothering you. So maybe that's a signal to you to kind of take a step back, be relentless, but you got to let people make their own decisions. So you can't somebody from that.
Yeah, I think being an example is good. I think that's the best thing a coach can do is don't tell people to not overtrain while you're doing too much yourself. And I just think, I think one thing a coach can always do is just always, like you said, the word relentless, and like it's kind of in that tier. It's just like, hey, keep talking to these people, ask them questions, right? I'm a big ask, don't accuse, right? Because in a lot of cases, even a coach that sees an athlete often, you'd really, in a lot of times, don't really know the answer. You can assume things, but that gets really dangerous sometimes, because if you're wrong, there's no one really holding you accountable to these thoughts that you're having.
Yeah.
So I'm big on, if you ask more questions without judgment, without bias, right? Don't put your spin on it. You can actually get them in real time to start really saying things out loud about their own training.
Yep.
And maybe that in a lot of cases, that's what an athlete needs. They don't always need to be told what to do. They need to really kind of word vomit a little bit and really put their thoughts out there. And a lot of times a coach can hear what they say. They can give a reply, give some feedback. And now the athlete, because a lot of this stuff is obvious. Like what a lot of athletes that overtrain, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. You're
doing too much. You're under recovering. You have an addiction to working out, and you're always chasing these short-term wins. But you don't, as a coach, always wanted to tell them that. You want them to get to say it. And I think asking them questions relentlessly, and in some cases, guys, this might take 88 conversations before they really realize it.
Absolutely.
And I think the coach's job is you got to be patient with some of this stuff, because I think the overtraining issue is a lot deeper than I'm trying to burn extra calories. And I think the best coaches can actually get the athletes to say it themselves.
Right.
That I got to do something different. I really, and I need some help, and that's when I think real progress within this area can be made. So coaches, be relentless. Coaches, ask questions, don't accuse, and try to be no bias, no judgment from that perspective, because it goes deeper than I think a lot of us do realize.
Yeah. And in the end, we're trying to help. So it's just, you're trying to get to that person as fit as possible, so you're both coming at it with the same goal in mind, and it's just you and the athlete have to find that middle ground to find the real reason why they might be overtraining. And once they identify that, then it's easy to kind of find a path to where you can both meet that mutual goal that we're both looking for, but in as safe a way as possible.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it. That was a really good conversation on overtraining, something that most people kind of dabble with at some point. A lot of people in our world, they undertrain, but in this CrossFit world, they overtrain. And yes, I'd rather be on this side of it than the other. To quote Allison, who's now a doctor out at Stanford, I believe. She's, I think that's where she's at right now. Former member at Bison. She's like, I'd rather have a bum shoulder than a bad heart. But the goal is to have neither. And I think that's a big component to this overtraining conversation, is that you are trying to make yourself the healthiest version. So that was a good conversation. Thank you, Adam.
All right.
And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.